The Runaway Wife. It is a tale about the tragic life of a fallen Muslim girl. This is also a love story of an Egyptian prostitute who fell in love with one of her clients, who changed her life for the better. It was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer, who may quote brief passages from the review for printing in a newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this book are fictitious, and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Chapter 19. A cloud of darkness covered my vision, and a fog of sadness filled my heart. I rose from the doorstep like a defeated soldier and pulled my exhausted legs as if they were shackled to the ground. I moved forward aimlessly. I walked like a beggar forced by misery and necessity to wander the streets. I became like an outcast woman whose impurity could not be touched in Hindu society, or like a patient who carries an infectious plague or a very serious incurable disease like coronavirus. Even though it was sunset, it was hot and humid. I had not been walking for long before I felt thirsty and exhausted. I stopped somewhere and began to think of another escape from my desperate situation. I knew that sooner or later I would be chased by some thugs or police cars patrolling at night. I decided to knock on random people's doors and ask them for help and temporary shelter. I did not expect much to receive permanent service or long-term assistance. I was longing for a kind family like that of Navy Officer Monier to shelter me for a night or so. My feet took me to a house located alone at the end of that area. It seems that the neighbors left their homes and moved away from that house as if it were haunted by demons. The house was surrounded by trees and piles of garbage and was inhabited by stray dogs. Wild grasses grew on its sides, in which all kinds of birds made their nests. I concluded that it was the home of a poor family. I knew people didn't want to live near miserable neighbors. I had no objection to living with the destitute family if they agreed to provide me with shelter. I will work as a maid for a rich family or as a cleaner in the market and be of help to the poor family. I stood in front of the door and listened before knocking. I did not hear any human voice coming from the house. I thought it might be an abandoned place. A stupid idea came to my mind and I decided to implement it because my urgent need prompted me to do so. In my desperate state, I wouldn't even mind breaking into the house as a burglar and using it as a shelter. I knocked on the door and waited. I tried again, but there was no response. I knocked on the door harder and used a stone to hit it. When no one responded, I started pushing the door. My loud knocking brought many stray dogs towards me. The emaciated dogs barked at me and started getting closer and closer to me. My fear that rabid dogs might eat me alive from hunger made me forcefully open the door. It was not closed properly. It was closed with a wooden stick. My force made the stick move backwards. The door was partially open with enough space to give me a chance to squeeze my body inside. I had many scratches on my skin when I entered the house by force. When I looked around, I saw a young man standing inside the abandoned house complex and staring at me like a genie emerging from Aladdin's magic lamp. The expression on his face revealed his astonishment. He looked at me standing inside his house with devilish eyes. The house resembled a ruin inhabited by goblins. I looked at him with frightened eyes. I waited for his reaction, terrified of him. When I noticed that he did not take the first step in speaking, I talked to him. "I'm sorry, sir," I said in a trembling voice. I was afraid of the mad dogs. He didn't answer me. He kept looking at me. "I'm so sorry, sir," I apologized to him again. "I knocked on your door before I forced it open. The stray dogs would have attacked me if I had not entered your house." The man remained silent. I thought he wanted me to leave right away. When he did not say a word, I concluded that he was really a human demon who appeared in the form of a genie and wanted to attack me and rape me because I heard that genies and fairies or jinnias can have sex with human beings, women and men, and give birth with them to goblins. Fearing that something like this might happen to me, I turned back and tried to open the door. The young man who I thought was the genie of Aladdin's magic lamp shouted, "Wait a minute." I turned my face and looked at him. He started walking slowly towards me. When he reached the door, he put his right hand on the wooden stick and prevented me from opening it. I backed away from him, shaking like a reed, my body dripping with sweat. "Do you consider this an animal farm or a haunted house?" he asked me angrily. "I'm sorry, sir. Those stray dogs chased me and tried to bite me." The man said impatiently, "Yes, I heard that, but why did you come so close to this house?" "I was passing by on the road near your house, but rabid dogs attacked me." "This is not true. I saw you when you stood in front of the door and started knocking on it with a stone in your hand. Our dogs didn't start barking at you until you started forcing the door open." I understood from his words that he was monitoring my movements before I approached his door. I heard that some young single Egyptians like to sneak and peep through secret holes and watch beautiful women pass by. Some of them masturbate with their hands until each one of them his erect phallus ejaculates semen into the pussy of the beautiful woman he sees on the street and imagines that he is fucking her in his bed while she is naked. Before he could actually implement his fantasy on me by raping me on the ground like a dog attacking a bitch on the street, I decided to apologize to him and leave. "I know, sir, I am wrong and I am not supposed to enter your house like this. Since you already came here, tell me what you want." "I don't want anything, sir. I just want to leave." "Do you know anyone in this house?" "No, sir." "Did someone give you the address of this house and ask you to come here?" "I don't know anyone in this house." "Are you a thief who confesses to stealing, or a gold digger girl searching for money in this wasteland in which no one can live except vagrants and stray dogs?" "No, I am not a thief, sir. I am an honorable girl from a decent Muslim family." "Then what's your problem? Did you run away from your Muslim parents because they wanted to kill you in an honor killing, or did your Arab husband catch you committing adultery with another man in his house and bed and try to slaughter you with his knife?" I looked at him suspiciously before saying sheepishly, "Yes, sir. I fled my home and my city because of the shameful adultery you mentioned about my Egyptian husband, but I was innocent and a victim of sexual blackmail. I have no relatives in the city. I have become a homeless wife, without a safe shelter, without money or work. You are welcome to stay at this charity home until you find shelter and work. But do you live alone here, or do you have a family? Why do you want to know that? I am the man of this house, and I gave you permission to stay. I can't stay with you if you're a pounding bachelor alone." "I'm not alone. There are other people inside the house." I wanted to ask him if the other residents staying with you were male or female, but I felt like he might take offense. So I postponed my inquiry until I found out whether they were humans, jinns, women, men, or children. Then I followed him into the abandoned house, trembling with fear and my heart beating like an African drum. There was only one hut in that isolated place. It looked like it was actually a place of ruins rather than a human habitation. Even the insane people may not be placed in housing such as a city waste disposal dumpster. When I entered the dark, cave-like hut, I could not see its interior space. I stood at the door until the man lit a local oil lamp that resembled a Ramadan lantern. I entered slowly and was terrified when he asked me to enter. My eyes scanned the objects inside the hut, and I saw almost no furniture there. The interior space was filled with 5 small beds, and there were no chairs, tables, sofas, or any other useful household items. I was surprised to find that 4 beds were occupied by some sleepers. There was only 1 bed vacant. The sleepers were covering their faces and bodies with dirty bedding blankets. They probably wrapped themselves in these covers to keep away the thousands of flies and mosquitoes. The hut smelled of breath, sweat, tobacco, liquor, and other unpleasant smells. I was about to close my nose from the stench, but I was afraid that my host would feel insulted and provoked and then hit me and kick me out or attack me and rape me. He showed me something that he said was a chair. It's a little empty tin made out of zinc. When I sat on it, it made a noise and shook as if I was sitting on the back of a colt. I carefully balanced myself so as not to fall backward, forward, or sideways. Meanwhile, my eyes were scanning the sleepers to see if they were men or women. Even though I couldn't see their faces, I knew they were adults. The young man asked me in a whisper if I wanted a cold drink or hot tea. "Thank you, sir," I said quietly. "I just want some cold water to drink." My voice was a little louder than his whisper. He put his finger to his lips indicating that I should speak quietly. He does not want to disturb the people of the cave, who seem to have been sleeping for years, and he is their dog, lying out guarding them. As soon as he left the hut to get water, one of the sleepers revealed his face and looked at me as if he were a human monster wanting to pounce on me and devour me like human flesh while I was alive. He was young too. I felt uncomfortable when he continued to stare at me. He stretched out his body and said in a slightly louder voice, "Hello, Miss World." I did not respond to his greeting and his phrase, which was laden with the sexual desire of an intense young man. I turned my face away and ignored him. Another also revealed his face and looked at me. I realized I had come to a man's lodging. The other two men removed their covers and sat on their beds as well. I started to panic. I was sweating and shaking like a shin. One of them looked at me and said angrily, "Who brought this girl here?" One of them replied, "Hassan brought her, oh Hussein." Why did he bring her during the week? Didn't we agree that it is not permissible for any street girl or a whore in a brothel that comes to this house only on weekends? Yes, you're right, Hussein. But sometimes a coincidence is better than a promise. Their short conversation revealed to me what they thought I was. They concluded that I was a prostitute and that their companion, Hassan, was a stalker who found me wandering the streets and brought me to their hut, which looked like the cave of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Before I could correct their wrong idea about me, Hassan brought water and handed it to me. "Relax, guys," he said while smiling. "This girl is just a temporary guest in our house. Circumstances forced her to flee her luxurious residence and bring her to our humble home. She said that her Muslim husband wanted to kill her in defense of his honor, and that is why she fled from his boiling anger. She wants to stay with us in this beautiful hotel as an unpaid guest until she finds another home." "No, thank you, sir. I will not stay here in a hostel that has no women but only men. I have to find safe housing for a girl like me somewhere else." I told that to the person who brought me. When I said that, I immediately stood up and walked towards the door of the small hut. Someone extended his hand and blocked my path. I slapped his hand away. Another person intercepted me again, standing and trying to block my path. I pushed him back until he fell onto the bed. I escaped from the hut before someone could attack me and prevent me from leaving. The young man who asked me to stay ran after me and grabbed my waist at the door. His hands were around my body from behind. I couldn't use my hands to slap him or push him away. I struggled to free myself from his strong grip. He started pulling me back. The other 4 young men surrounded us and kept looking at us as we fought like 2 wrestlers. I told him in a breathless voice, "I will scream loudly and call people if you don't release me." One of them shouted, "Release her and let her go, Hassan, before she screams." Another said, "If she brings the neighbors on us, they will come and beat us or kill us all." Another said, "Yes, Brother Hassan, please let her go. Maybe she is really not a prostitute." But Hassan was not ready to release me, and I felt that he started rubbing his erect penis on my buttocks as if it was burning with intense desire that rape could not alleviate. 2 of them approached him and forced him to release me. Someone else pulled out the support stick and opened the door for me. The same person who opened the door said, "Get out of here, you dirty whore, before you bring us a disaster that might land us in prison or the graves." As soon as I was freed from the grip of the lustful Hassan, who tried to rape me on the ground in front of his companions, like a dog preying on a female dog, I ran out of the cave of thieves as if I were a stray gazelle miraculously escaping from the den of wolves. Another miracle of God made my way, running at the speed of light, through the barking of many rabid dogs that were chasing me at the speed of sound. I did not stop for a moment or look back, and I feared that I would become like the wife of the prophet Lot, who was turned into a pillar of salt when she turned and saw the fires of God burning the Sodomites of Sodom and Gomorrah. I continued to run at lightning speed as if I were being chased by a pack of human wolves and hungry animal beasts. Chapter 20. It was very dark when I escaped from the den of thieves, rapists, and their voracious dogs. Then I left that miserable area and entered a luxurious area, and I was still running terrified. I had to stop and take a break every now and then. When I stopped, I felt like the weight in my stomach due to pregnancy made it difficult to walk anymore. I didn't give up on my previous plan. I looked around for another house to go to. This time I decided to choose the best house. I chose a house whose external appearance revealed to me that it was a residence for the rich. Its outer door is decorated with beautiful graphic paintings and lamps with colored lights. The entrance was also surrounded by colorful flowers and beautiful roses. I walked slowly and stood in front of the big gate. In silence, I asked God to help me receive a good welcome from the family. With trembling hands, I pressed the buzzer and waited. A woman in her early 40s answered the bell. She was wearing a hijab and abaya, and this made it clear to me that she was religious and the wife of a major cleric. She was very surprised to see me standing in front of her house. When she got over the shock, she began to inquire about the purpose of my visit. "Who are you and what do you want?" "I have a problem, Auntie, and I need help," I said quietly. "What kind of help do you want?" "Are you a beggar girl?" the woman asked. "I am not a street girl or a beggar. I am a girl from a decent Muslim family, but circumstances made me homeless." "What do you want us to do for you?" "I need your help so I can find honest work and safe shelter." The religious-looking woman said, "Listen, girl, go and hide your shame somewhere else. This is the residence of the Imam of the Grand Mosque, the Venerable Sheikh Rifat Hassan Farid. My dear husband and I help the poor and needy, but not the bad girls and street prostitutes. I, my dear aunt, am not a bad girl or a homeless prostitute on the streets. If I am the type of bad young woman, I will not come to your doorstep for help. Where is your family? Where is your home? Of course, you have a family and a home. From the appearance of your face, you look to be a free Arab girl from a Muslim family." "Yes, I have an Egyptian family and a Muslim home, but I fled my family." "I can see your big stomach, which indicates that you are pregnant. You must have committed adultery with a man and become pregnant unlawfully without a legitimate Islamic marriage." "Yes, aunt, I was deceived by 2 men. Did the men come and kidnap you from your father's house and rape you? Didn't you go to them yourself?" "Yes, you're right, my aunt. I made immoral mistakes and allowed 2 men to commit adultery with me, and I became pregnant by forbidden marriage from one of them, but I do not want to repeat that again. Go tell your parents about it. If they can't accept you, no one will accept you into their home or help you in the city." When the woman who said she was the wife of the imam of a large mosque finished her last sentence, she closed her door in my face. Like an impure, outcast girl, I turned my back and crept away from the imam's huge house. I hadn't gone far when I realized a young man was following me. He didn't try to approach me, but followed me like a stray dog. I quickened my steps to keep myself a safe distance from him. I avoided entering any narrow passage. He wants me to enter a secluded place with no people so he can jump over my body and rape me like a rooster preying on its hen on the side of the road. To avoid him attacking me, I continued to wander around the residences of some wealthy people. Suddenly my eyes noticed a police car coming in my direction. I immediately stopped and stood in front of a house. The police car pulled up to where I was standing and parked on the other side. I knew that the police saw me and suspected my movements and guessed that I was a homeless street prostitute. I pressed the doorbell so the police wouldn't come and arrest me. A woman, 3 girls, and a boy appeared at the door. The woman's eyes studied my face for a while before she asked me what I wanted. "I am an Upper Egypt girl from southern Egypt and a stranger in Cairo. I arrived in town today. My luggage and money were stolen." "Where was your property stolen?" "At the railway station." "How did I get here?" "I came on foot." "She's lying to you, Mom," said one of the 3 girls. "It was not possible to walk all the way from the railway station to this place." "Our sister Rehab is right, Mother," the last 2 girls shouted in unison. "It may take a person more than 7 hours to cover this long distance on foot," Rehab said. "Moreover, it was extremely hot during the day. She would have fainted or died on the way in the heat before she could reach our dorm," the first girl said. I didn't argue with the 3 girls. I waited for their mother to pass her judgment on me. "Do you need some water to drink?" their mother asked me. "I need shelter for the night." "How can I take you to my home if I don't know who you are or where you come from?" The boy said, At least give her some money, mother. What will she do with the money? She can take a taxi and go to her relatives in the city. My brother, I have no relatives in the city. This is what I expected, said one of the girls. She is a homeless girl. She probably ran away from her parents. Why did you run away from your family? The mother asked me. I fled my town because my Sadie father wanted to slaughter me in an honor killing. Are you pregnant with an illegitimate child? Yes, my aunt, a man deceived me and made me pregnant with an illegitimate child. The mother said to her 3 daughters, my good and honorable daughters. This is what will happen to a Muslim girl who disobeys her parents and falls in love with a man before marriage. She is deceived in the name of love, commits adultery with him, becomes pregnant with an illegitimate child or a walled haram, then runs away from home to hide her shame, and wanders the streets at night like this homeless girl that you see with your own eyes. Look at her big belly, full of shame and scandal. And you know what will happen to homeless women and street girls. Yes, we know, mother, the 3 girls said in unison. Either she is killed in an honor killing at the hands of her father or brother, or her defiled body is burned with fire, or she is displaced from her family's home and goes to a brothel and becomes a permanent prostitute, selling her unclean thighs and pussy to dozens of men a day. When the righteous woman finished teaching her honorable and chaste daughters a practical lesson, she asked them to enter the house with her son. Then, she walked out her door and became remarkably close to me. She brought her mouth close to my ear and said in a low voice, if I were you, I would go to the Nile River and jump into it and hide in its bottom my haram burden, my adultery, and my shame. Although I did not get any help or good advice from that woman, her 3 daughters, and her son, I thanked them in my heart because they helped me get rid of my stalker, the young man who was following me, and also the policeman who wanted to arrest me. By then, the police car was already gone. I crossed the street and resumed my aimless night of wandering. I walked for a long time without anyone bothering me. Finally, I reached a neighborhood whose houses revealed the miserable situation its residents were living in. Most fences were made of rusty zinc, mud walls, or wood and cow dung. There was almost no door in any house. Some houses were closed with shaky doors or thorny tree branches. The area was teeming with stray dogs. Donkeys, cows, and chickens made all kinds of sounds for domestic animals. It was hard to believe that humans could live in peace with such shouting, barking, and howling pets. I was afraid to go any further while those stray dogs were howling at me as if they were hyenas and wanted to eat me alive. I approached the house of the destitute and knocked on the door forcefully. I used a large stone to knock on its old wood. Before the gate opened, I saw a woman in her mid-40s and a young girl heading towards me. The woman said in a very polite way, "You are welcome." I said in a low voice as if I were a beggar who had come to beg, "I need your help, aunt." My sad words probably touched her heart and made her invite me in. "Come in, my daughter." Your words melted my heart. I entered immediately and walked behind the woman and her daughter. When we entered one of the huts, they asked me to sit down and offered me some juice. Then the woman and her daughter asked me to tell them my problem. I was honest with them and told them my whole tragedy. I told them everything that had happened to me since I came to Cairo and the reason that prompted me to flee from my outraged husband and escape my town. Every now and then, the woman and her daughter would comment on my story, either positively or negatively. When I finished, the mother said sadly, "Everything, my daughter Ikram, depends on God and my husband. You are now pregnant with what is forbidden. My daughter, I wish you had come to us before you did it. Now, I don't think my husband, Sheikh Abu Fatima, will agree to keep you here." Daughter Fatima said, "At least, Mother Aisha, allow Ikram to stay until tomorrow morning. In that case, we shouldn't wake up your old father and tell him about it. My father sleeps in the men's section with my 3 younger brothers, and they won't all know she's here until tomorrow. Okay, Fatima, prepare a bed for her and let me go to the kitchen to find something for her to eat." That night was a quiet and good night for me. I was given a dinner of fava beans, a loaf of bread, milk to drink, and a bed to sleep in for a while. Unfortunately, as the loving wife Aisha predicted, her husband, Sheikh Abu Fatima, became very angry with her and his daughter when he learned about my illegal pregnancy. He scolded them in front of me and asked me to leave immediately. He asked them why they allowed such a fallen and homeless girl to enter his house without notifying him. Then the angry old man dragged me out of his house by the hand with threatening words and warnings. He told me that if I approached his house and his family members, he would beat me and hand me over to the police. I was expelled from that temporary shelter as an impure woman, carrying an illegitimate child in my womb. I was expelled as an outcast and a fallen woman, carrying a contagious disease like the coronavirus, so no man wants me to desecrate him and contaminate his women. Then I sat in a secluded corner of the street and cried for a long time. I realized that all doors of hope had been closed in my face. I had no choice but to end my life as the rich woman asked me to do, by throwing my body defiled by adultery into the waters of the Nile River, or to fulfill the prophecy of the prostitute I met in prison. She advised me not to deceive myself by trying to find a halal job and live an honorable life, but rather accept my inevitable reality by going to the brothel and becoming a prostitute. I must either follow that cruel mother's advice and go to the Nile River and kill myself and with me the illegitimate child in my womb, or go to the pimp lady and become a prostitute and sell my body to many men every day. I felt very bitter about the harsh reality of our Islamic society, which has no mercy on women. I hated everyone I ever met. I knew that if I committed suicide, I would be punishing myself for a crime I did not commit. Because of the hope of finding and saving my two sons, Adele and Imad, I decided not to end my life. Eventually, after no one agreed to help or shelter me, I had to go to a brothel to meet a pimp who would accept homeless girls as prostitutes. I remembered that my Arab inmate who I met in prison told me that as soon as I got out of prison, I should take a taxi and go to the address she gave me. She said that the pimp, the brothel owner, would pay the taxi fare. I rose to my feet, hailed a taxi, and headed toward my inevitable fate. As the driver drove quickly through the crowded city streets, I saw hundreds of people. Some of them were going to work, others were wandering aimlessly in the streets, and many students in their school uniforms were going to school. The little pupils reminded me of my own innocent children. However, I had hope in my heart that one day I might return to my hometown and save them no matter what happened to them. If it weren't for them, I would have killed myself and found relief. The taxi driver took a long time to reach the pimp woman's house. I had never traveled such a long distance within Cairo before that day. Her house was located almost at the end of town. When the taxi arrived at her house, things in people's appearances began to change. As if we traveled to another city in another galaxy and another planet. I saw men standing in front of some houses and peeking through the door openings. In some homes, I saw young women standing at the outside doors of their homes. They were all dressed immodestly. They wore their clothes in a way that the religious imams say about them. They were naked and clothed. They painted their faces with all kinds of makeup. They were chewing gum, laughing, and talking freely with the men. Some of them were hugged and harassed by everyone who approached them. I knew they were prostitutes even though I had never seen one before. Their faces were devoid of shame, and their hearts were free of fear. Most of the men standing there were Egyptians, Arabs, and foreigners. I couldn't accept the fact that one day I would stand there and do what those shameless girls were doing. Then I will dry up in shame and become a fallen woman as a commodity for sale. A petty and vile bitch girl. The taxi stopped in front of one of those brothels. The men gathered around me like hungry wolves. Some of them tried to touch my body. I pushed the hands that extended to touch my body. I fought my way through the force until I reached the door. At least 4 clustered girls were standing at the door. Without greeting them or saying a word, I handed the message to one of them. DeJoy took the letter and disappeared inside the house. The other slutty girls talked to each other in languages I didn't understand. The girls soon reappeared, followed by an elderly woman. The woman was Arab. The other prostitutes were a mix of African and Asian girls. But I later discovered that there are Arab prostitutes from Syria, Tunisia, Sudan, Iraq, Libya, Algeria, and Morocco. There were even Palestinian, Jordanian, Lebanese, and Iranian whores. Only the brothel owner was Egyptian like me. The pimp lady was nicknamed Sweet Coconut, and that's what the prostitutes called her. No one knew her real name. She was as big-bodied as a dinosaur. She invited me in. As I was entering the house, a man's hand touched me on my buttocks. I turned my face and screamed angrily at the man who touched me. The other girls burst into laughter. I looked at those prostitutes with great anger and then entered. The fat woman took me to one of the rooms and asked me to sit down. She confronted me for a while. Then she asked me to stand on my feet and turn around. As I spun like a table fan, her eyes searched my body from head to toe. After she was satisfied with what she saw in me, she began interviewing me. "What is your real name?" The woman asked me in a voice as harsh as a man's. "Ikram Silla." "I mean to say, what was your name when you were born?" "Ikram Silla." "Okay, I believe you. What is your problem?" "I mean to say, what you did that made you run away from your family." "I do not want to keep a girl in my home who killed her husband, her haram baby, or anyone else. I don't mind any other crime you committed other than murder." "I didn't kill anyone." "Are you now pregnant with an illegitimate child?" "No, I'm not pregnant now. I deliberately lied to her." I remembered my inmate in prison telling me not to tell the pimp that I was pregnant with an illegitimate baby. "Are you having your period now?" "No, I do not have it." "In this case, you should start working immediately." The friend Hafez Amin waited for his friend Ikram Silla to continue telling the rest of her tragic story. When he saw that she had become silent, he asked her quietly in a sad voice, "What happened after that?" "I've turned into a whore. I have become a dirty bitch. I was sold to men every day. I was abused and raped multiple times in a day. Even when I was sick and couldn't get out of bed, I was forced to have sex with my clients. Sometimes I was forced to have sex with more than 20 men in a day. Even during my menses, I was forced to sleep with men. In the middle of the night, when I was tired and asleep, I was woken up and forced to let a rich drunk man fuck me for the rest of the night until morning. Many times, I would fall into a deep sleep while a drunk man inserted his penis into my pussy and raped me while I was either very drunk or asleep and snoring. If I refused to hand over my sleepy or drugged body, I will be beaten by the pimp gangsters, and sometimes these thugs will gang rape me as punishment for my rebellion. Many times, other prostitutes beat me mercilessly because they believed I had stolen their clients because of my unmatchable beauty and tempting sexy body. Many police officers slept with me without paying to fuck me. Sweet Coconut Pimp considers me to be fucked by a police officer without paying me as a bribe to him so that he does not close down the brothel and tavern and arrest all of us prostitutes, enablers, and thugs and throw us in prison. Sometimes I was forced to sleep with 7 policemen at the same time. In a short time, I became addicted to drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes and shisha, and taking drugs. I have been making and selling all kinds of local liquors. I sold smuggled foreign alcohol and drugs such as hashish and other types. The pimp Sweet Coconut had a nightclub in some of her brothels, and every night she would make us belly dancers semi-naked and entertain her wealthy clients. We had to dance fully naked while holding onto an iron post. She was making a lot of money from pretty girls like me who would dance Ashra Baldi to rich old men and get fucked by her wealthy clients. Some of her wealthy clients were old men and filthy rich. I have had sex several times with older Arab men aged 70 and above. None of them were able to get an erection except by taking Viagra pills. Whenever I refused to sleep with a rich old geezer from Saudi Arabia or other Arab Gulf countries, I would get beaten up by thugs. I lost my value as a human being. I have become a fallen woman for sale. I did everything a dangerous criminal and dirty girl would do. I've become a fucking bitch. Hafez shouted angrily. "No, you're not a fucking prostitute. You are an innocent girl. You are always a pure and chaste woman. Your value is in your soul, not in your body. You have a pure heart of gold and a noble character. That's why I loved you at first sight and smuggled you from those brothels and evil people." "No, I'm not, my dear friend Hafez. You may not accept my innocence if I tell you what I did to my 3rd illegitimate child." Hafez wanted to justify his friend Ikram more, but her latest announcement made him hold his breath. He looked at her suspiciously. Then he asked her in a low voice, "What happened to your 3rd child?" The pimp lady Sweet Coconut learned that I was pregnant with an illegitimate child after about 2 months. The other prostitutes told her about my illegal pregnancy when they saw that my belly was starting to get bigger. The fat woman gave me two options, either to leave the brothel and not allow me to take a single pound that I earned through prostitution with her, or to stay with the illegitimate child in my stomach and hand it over to her after I deliver it. I chose the second alternative because I am about to give birth and have nowhere to go. When I gave birth to my third illegitimate child, she took her away. She was a baby girl and I named her Ikram. What did the pimp do to the child, Ikram Jr.? Hafez asked innocently. The former Egyptian prostitute, Ikram, had stood up and backed away from her boyfriend, Hafez. She put her hands on her mouth and said while crying, "She killed my baby daughter Ikram in front of my eyes. I saw her when she strangled my little girl Ikram to death. Then she dug a hole behind the brothel she owned and buried my murdered baby girl in it."